Hey everybody, it's James from dreamweaver.co.uk. I got a message the other day through my internet on the contact form, and somebody didn't have Fireworks or Photoshop and wanted to know how to make web text boxes that expanded. So here they are. This is pure CSS web text boxes for your website. Now, just to make it clear, there are no images being used whatsoever. All we are using is pure CSS and obviously HTML. Okay, so we're going to go site, new site, and I'm going to call the site boxes, and I'm going to set a local root folder on my desktop. So I'm just going to delete that bit, and I'm going to press the browse folder option. I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call that boxes as well. And we're not going to be using any images, but Dreamweaver always wants to know what your default images folder is. So I'm going to create a CSS folder, and while I'm there, I'm going to create an images folder as well, and I'll link to that. Now, I did make another tutorial on web text boxes that expanded. Those used images to make the effects work. They probably look a little bit more stylish, but they won't load as quickly as the CSS web text boxes will. Now, we're only talking milliseconds, but if you want to learn how to do it with images, I'll put a link in the below bar for you if you're watching on YouTube or on my website. Okay, so we'll go to File New. We'll create a blank HTML, XHTML 1.0 transitional, split the design view, and we'll go straight into body tags. And what we're going to do is we're going to create 3 divs. One's going to be a div that wraps around the whole lot. Then you've got a top div which is going to hold the title, and a bottom div which will hold the bottom in place, and we'll put some rounded edges onto it. Now, the first div I'm going to create is called holder, so I'm going to type div ID equals holder, and I'm going to close the holder div with a closing comment so we know where that ends. Now, inside I'm going to create a top div, so this will be positioned at the very top, and then I'll create a bottom div which will be created at the bottom, obviously. So that's div ID and top, and we'll put a closing comment at the end of that, so end top div, and we'll create a div ID with an ID of bottom, and I'll put a closing comment end bottom div there. Okay, now basically what we're going to do is we're going to put a paragraph tag in the middle, so it will expand naturally with the text that we put into it. Okay, so apart from the paragraph tag and the paragraph content that we're going to put in a bit later, we've pretty much finished with our HTML. Now all we have to do is create a CSS that makes it all work and happen. So if you click inside the holder div, anywhere inside that div, and we'll go to create a new CSS rule over by the files panel, so click on that button, and we're going to define a new style sheet just like I do with all my other tutorials, and I'm going to save it into a CSS folder that I created earlier, and I'm going to call it boxes.css. Okay, once you've done that, click OK, and we're going to hand code all of the CSS. So at the top of the document next to the source code, there's your CSS file. Click on that, and you'll notice that the holder selector has been made when we selected the new CSS rule. So the first thing I'm going to do is set the height to auto, because we want it to automatically expand with no constraints. So height colon auto and a semicolon on the end. Alright, I'm going to set the width to 250 pixels. That's the same width as the image text boxes we made last week. So that's width colon 250 pixels and a semicolon on the end. Now I'm going to set a selector up for the top div, so that's pound top, open and close curly braces, and while we're there we're going to put a selector in for the bottom div as well. Okay, so most of the things will be the same for the top div, so we can just copy and paste them into the bottom and make small amendments. So I'm going to set the width to 248 pixels because we're going to put a border on the left and the right, and they're 1 pixel each, so we have to make it a width of 248 pixels. Now the height I'm going to set to 30 pixels. That's going to contain our title text. We're going to put a h3 title tag in, and I'm going to set the borders now. So border 1 pixel solid, and that's pound 333, sort of grey colour. Put a semicolon on the end. Now this isn't the side borders, we'll do that with the paragraph. Okay, so just copy and paste that into the bottom div, and we will have to make a few amendments, but initially it's going to have a width of 248 pixels, and it will have the border as well, and we're going to have to take the top border, the top level border of the bottom div out at some point. Okay, so I'm going to change the height to 10 pixels because we want it a little bit smaller and have a nice little rounded edge when we add a border radius to it. Now, if we go back into HTML code, I'm going to put in a paragraph opening and closing tag. Now I'm over at Libsyn.com, and this is where I go to get all my Lorem Ipsum text. It's so handy. So copy, and we're going to paste that into the paragraph tag in the HTML document. So if you go head over to Libsyn.com, copy and paste that into the paragraph, press refresh, and you'll see that the paragraph appears there, and it appears to be auto expanding already, so that's brilliant. Let's preview that in Firefox now. Okay, so we're looking quite good here. We've got the top and the bottom div in place. We need to add a side border to the left and the right, and we need to pad that text in a little bit because it's sticking right out by the edges there. Okay, but so far so good. I think we're doing quite well here, and it's only taken us 5 or 6 minutes so far. So let's go back into the CSS, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a selector for the paragraph which is inside the holder div. So I'm going to type #holder and P, so we want to target the paragraph inside the holder div tag. Put your open and closing curly braces, and the first thing I'm going to type is a border dash left and a colon. I'm going to set that to 1 pixel solid, and I'm going to give it a hexadecimal color of #333 and put a semicolon on the end. Now I'm going to go to border dash right and do the same thing, so that's colon 1 pixel solid #333 and a semicolon. Notice that's the same color as the top and bottom divs as well. Okay, so I'm going to set a padding of 10 pixels on the top and the bottom for the paragraph, and I'm going to pad it in on the left and the right by 15 pixels and put a semicolon. You see it's already made the changes there, that's brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to preview that in Firefox now. Save all the changes. Okay, so we can see it's padded in on the left and the right. We can see we've got a border on the left and the right, but there's a gap between the top div and the bottom div and the borders, so we need to close that gap, and that's easily done. So we'll go back into our CSS file now. Right, now still inside the paragraph selector in the holder div, we're going to type margin colon and 0, and what that does is it will take all of the default margins out from the paragraph. So let's preview that again now, make sure we've done that correctly. And we have done it right. It's looking a lot like a expanding text box at the moment, so I'm very pleased at that. There's just one thing to note, and that's the bottom div there. We've got a border wrapped all the way around the div, and now we need to take that top border out from the bottom div. So what I'm going to do is a lot easier to go into the CSS styles panel. I know I don't do this a lot, but if we double click on the #bottom rule, and we'll adjust it using Dreamweaver settings. So I'm going to go into the border settings, I'm going to uncheck same for all for the style, and I'm going to take this top border off and set that to none. Okay, so once you click apply or click inside of design view, you'll see that the top border is gone now, so that's brilliant. Okay, so if we go to the bottom div, you see all these styles have been added by Dreamweaver, so it's automatically done that for us, and that's fantastic. Okay, so let's preview that in the browser now, and as you can see it looks pretty much like the web text boxes we've done with the images. It's just the basic shell at the moment, so we're going to make a few more adjustments to this now. Now I know for sure that this automatically auto expands with the content, but what I'm going to do just to make sure is to delete some of the text up to the specimen book, and when I delete that, if the bottom div follows and goes to the bottom, there you go, we can tell that that will be auto expanding because it's automatically contracting as well. Now those of you who have been to my website will know that I use these web text boxes, these expanding boxes, and I put links in them to separate all of the content, and they're perfect for that. Now I always put a title in, and I usually make it up of a h3 title tag. So inside div top we're going to put a h3, and I'm going to type this as a title, and you'll see after clicking in design view that the title doesn't appear where we want it to be in the div, and it's also broken the left and right borders there, so we need to fix that now. I'm going to go back into the CSS boxes CSS that I created. Now it's the same problem we had earlier with the paragraph breaking the borders, so we're going to fix it the same way. First I'm going to put in a background color, and this is the background for the top div, and I'm going to make that $CCC and put a semicolon on the end just to contrast the other grey. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to set the margin to 0. so that we can close that the break between the border lines there.